I always said nothing scary happened to me, but that changed when I got Animal Crossing. Who could imagine that something scary could happen in a game like Animal Crossing? Let me tell you what happened. It started innocently, but that's often the case, isn't it? One day, I was bored and decided to open my 3DS to look for new games available. While browsing shops, I noticed Animal Crossing New Leaf was... A friend recommended Animal Crossing as a great game, which motivated me to buy it after seeing it on the list of popular games. However, I've always preferred to have a physical version of my games, so I went outside to buy it. In the first store I went to, it was out of stock. I tried another store with the same result, then went to one last store without much hope. When I went inside, everything seemed strangely quiet. There was no one in the store except the cashier. When he saw me, he looked really excited and shouted something like, "Finally a customer!" Then he asked me what I wanted. We started talking about the new games that were coming out, especially Pikmin 3. The salesman said he didn't like what he saw. As for me, I started talking about the gameplay of Pikmin 2, then we quickly changed the subject. After talking about this and that, I told him I wanted a copy of Animal Crossing New Leaf, and he seemed to judge me a little. He showed me the 3DS games, and I started looking for what I needed. I kept talking to the salesman to avoid awkward silence. After checking 3 times, I told him I couldn't find the game. He seemed bothered by that and came to check for himself. When he realized I was right, he said he'd check the storage room. He managed to find a perfectly new copy, but he still looked puzzled and asked me why. He told me he had just restocked the games and no customer had entered the store that day. There should have been multiple copies on the shelves and in storage. I told him he probably miscounted, or maybe the order arrived incorrectly, but he replied that it was unlikely. Then he handed me the game, but also a copy of the game Jak Daxter to apologize for the little problem. It wasn't a big commercial gesture, since they were having a sale on old games, which were now only worth $5. But I wasn't going to turn down such an opportunity, where I was. A little disappointed, it didn't seem to be the right version. They sold me Animal Crossing Dead Town, not New Leaf. At that moment, it didn't matter to me. I just wanted to explore this new world from Nintendo. As I was heading home, I was really looking forward to starting. There was nothing else I was more excited to do than to sit down and start playing. I plugged in my 3DS charger, inserted the game, and started a new game. Everything seemed normal. I was on the train. Some kind of cat came up to me, asked me my name and where I was going, and then let me choose the map I wanted to play on. As the train stopped at my town, my character was greeted as the mayor. I owed a huge debt to a raccoon. He called himself Tom Nook. I continued the rest of the tutorial, and on the very first day, I had finished paying off my loan, and my house was scheduled to be finished the next day. But I hate waiting. So, I saved and quit, changed the game's date by 1 day, and kept playing. My house was finished, and I had a list of tasks to do. I finished them and everything seemed to be going perfectly. At that moment, I realized it was a bit late, so I went to bed. When I woke up, I was ready to play again. I did several small tasks, and the list of things I had to do quickly got shorter. At that point in the game, I had the opportunity to create public works, and I started working on a fountain. Right before I left the game, I saw another house being built. A new resident was moving to town. I was starting to get really attached to my residence, but I was also going to love meeting a new person. I was really looking forward to it. I looked at the name on the sign in front of his lot and saw that his name was Reaper. His name was odd, it literally meant Grim Reaper, but I'd seen worse. That day, the only other notable event was getting stung by a bee. I went to get treated and left the game. When I returned to the game the next day, I was surprised that Reaper's house wasn't finished. The only thing there was a door. Strangely, when I pressed the button to knock, the game instead asked if I wanted to enter. Thinking it was a bug, I chose not to go in. And anyway, what good would it do me to go through a door that led nowhere? I kept saving bells, the in-game currency, to prepare for my next loan and future projects. That day I got bored quickly and saved before quitting the game. I didn't return to the game until late the next day. The first thing I noticed was that everyone looked sad and they had all gathered in the town square. They were all saying the same thing. What happened to him? But the thing is, I couldn't understand why they were saying that. I looked for my favorite character, Magogo, but couldn't find him anywhere. I thought he must be at his place, so I decided to go there. But when I got there, his house was in ruins. The roof had collapsed, and the door was lying on the ground in several pieces. Strangely, the door appeared to have been attacked with a sharp object. I kept walking in the game, sad and angry about what had happened to my Gogo and his house. Walking past Reaper's house, I saw another section was finished. I couldn't figure out what had happened to my Gogo, but it definitely had something to do with Reaper. I didn't look into it further. I made my to-do list, saved, and quit the game. I woke up early the next day and found a new resident without a house. It was strange watching him, dressed in black and lingering near Magogo's house. Like him, he was a monkey too, but with black fur and a red face. He also appeared somewhat transparent. It was a strangely interesting color choice for a game that was usually so cheerful. When I spoke to him, he only said his name was Lucy. That was the name of one of my residents. Lucy was a sow, not like him. I got worried and rushed to her place, but she was fine. Relieved, I continued my routine. While doing that, I noticed that no progress had been made on Ripper's house today. After finishing my tasks, I decided to quit the game. And as I was saving and quitting the game, I could have sworn I saw the door to Ripper's house open once again. The next day, I started the game and discovered that Lucy Latrouille had disappeared as well. Like with Magogo, I went to her house and found it destroyed. The door was shattered, just like before. A new person was near the house, just as strange as the one hanging around Magogo's house. He was completely white and semi-transparent. This person was a sow, like Lucy. I began to understand what was happening. What I was seeing was their ghost. With goosebumps, I decided to walk past Ripper's house. I noticed it was almost complete. I knew there was something unnatural about this character. I preferred to avoid the house. I walked on and did what I had to do. I talked to the ghost character, and he told me something strange. He told me that he was the mayor of the town. Confused, I returned to Reaper's house. The door was still closed. I watched carefully as I opened the pause menu, but the door stayed shut. I moved the cursor to save the fair game, and once again, nothing happened at all. Then I pressed the button to save fairness. And just as the screen started to fade to black, the door opened. Something poked its head through the door. Then, the screen went completely black. I immediately restarted the game. As I was leaving my house, I noticed a figure in the screen's corner. She ran away when she saw me. I followed them as they ran to Ripper's house. The figure went through the door and it slammed shut. I assured myself I avoided disaster. So I left the game again, feeling calm this time. When I went back into the game, everyone seemed scared of something. I checked every house. All were in perfect condition, except those of the previous victims. Ripper's house hadn't changed, but I felt a sense of danger as I approached it. I went to the town square, and that's where I discovered why everyone was so frightened. The great tree in the square was completely burned down, its charred remains rising like a threat. I wasn't scared, just annoyed. I was annoyed that the thing causing all this could think it could threaten me. I chose to continue and went to the town hall to keep up my routine. To my surprise, my assistant Marie was completely normal. Maybe the town hall was protected from the strange events? I played a bit more, then stopped. The nightmare truly began the next day. After restarting the game, I found my house destroyed and my character now resembled the other ghost characters. He couldn't do anything anymore. I couldn't control him, so I quit the game and created a new character. But the strange events continued. When the cat on the train showed me the map and asked where I wanted to go, I saw my previous town was still an option. I chose it, and he instantly asked why I wanted to visit that cursed place. He insisted on trying to change my mind, but each time I said that I really wanted to go there. And he ended up accepting. As my character got off the train, a figure in a long black cape greeted him silently. The figure then left, and I started walking through the city, noticing the destroyed houses again. The city was unusually dark, despite it being 2 in the afternoon. When I saw Marie walking around the city, I knew something was wrong, because Marie very rarely left the town hall. I always admired Marie for her incredible work ethic and how she helped the mayor. But then, she looked devastated when I saw her. When I spoke to her, she only said the mayor was dead. At that moment, I told myself I had to go check the Dripper house, and I found out it was finished. I went inside and started walking, and in front of me were the bodies of all the characters who had disappeared. My Gogo was impaled and hanging on a wall, Lucy's limbs were cut off, and her torso was lying on the floor. The mayor, who was my former character, was scattered everywhere. His limbs were hanging on the wall, his eyes were placed on a table not far away, and his head was in a corner of the room. I was horrified. The figure in the cloak then entered the room and said only one thing.
Do you like my decorations? I picked them all myself.
I wanted to leave, but Ripper blocked me. Whenever I tried to leave, he responded.
Why leave now? The party's just starting.
Out of desperation, I searched through my inventory and realized it was filled with only one thing. There were some kind of Japanese buckets. I quickly used one, and my character threw it at Ripper, who vanished with a terrifying scream. I immediately ran out of the house and turned around to throw several more buckets at him. I don't know why I did that, it felt instinctive. After I did it, I no longer felt in danger, but my heart was still racing. I couldn't believe what had just happened. Then I stopped playing the game, and I never touched it again. A lot of time has passed. I'm sharing this story because something happened to me near my home. I bought the game about 6 years ago, then moved to Japan, where I am now well settled. And I've become friends with my neighbors. One was playing Animal Crossing, so I used the chance to tell him about Reaper's story. He looked at me strangely, and immediately introduced me to his father. His father took me to an old house covered with little pieces of paper. He said they once had a neighbor named Ripper. After he arrived, 3 people from the town disappeared, and their house was completely destroyed, and one of those people was the mayor of the town. They quickly suspected Ripper and arrested him, but he escaped, causing widespread worry and paranoia. The Japanese, being very superstitious, then hurried to stick buckets all over Ripper's house. And since then, they put new buckets on the house every time there's an event that reminds them of Ripper. After sharing all that, my neighbor's father smiled, handed me something and said, "Since you saw it too, put this on his house. Otherwise he might come back." A lot of people ask me why I lost interest in Pokémon. I never tell them the real reason. I often say that I lost interest because I grew up, but that's not true at all. Talking about what I saw that day helps me accept it. And that's why I'm doing this. I'm gonna tell you the story of the Pokémon cartridge that destroyed my devoted love for the Pokémon Putrid Yellow version series. I worked at the local video game store for over a year and a half without issues. The worst thing was when people tried to steal games. One day, while working alone in the store, a boy around 10 came in. I noticed he was holding a Game Boy cartridge. I was surprised since most kids his age didn't know what a Game Boy was. So, for him to actually own one, I wondered if he needed help. He said he needed help fixing his game because it wasn't working. I asked him if he bought the game in our store, but he told me he didn't know because his father was the one who gave it to him. I wouldn't have accepted, but I saw the cartridge was Pokémon Yellow. I couldn't deny a child his Pokémon adventure. I asked him what was wrong, and he said his Pokémon kept dying. Looking at him, I thought he must have confused that with defeats, but I decided to just play along. And I told him I would do my best to fix his cartridge, even though I couldn't promise him anything. The young boy gave me his name and his phone number, then he left the store. I automatically put the game in the drawer under my register. That night, as I closed up, I threw the game in my backpack. I couldn't wait to get home and play that game I hadn't played in years. With some luck, its problem was likely what I suspected, a weak team losing every battle. If that was all, I was going to be able to fix it very quickly and become the hero of that young boy. So I went back home and found my old Game Boy, the one I used when I was a kid. I put in new batteries and searched my bag for the cartridge. As I was about to insert it, something caught my eye. Normally there's just a regular Pikachu on the sticker, but here its eyes were scratched out, which gave it a particularly creepy look. I tried to believe it was just a coincidence, but it still made me uneasy. I felt something strange, like I was being watched, and I shivered. I kept going and started the game. The game began as usual, with the Game Freak logo and intro music. At the title screen, everything went silent. I didn't notice it at first. I selected the current game save, but it didn't open. Only a message appeared saying the file was corrupted. That was odd, since the little boy said everything was fine on that side, and that he had just had the problem that his Pokémon were dying. I tried several times, but nothing worked. I was starting to get extremely frustrated, so I started a new game. The new game worked perfectly, with no glitches or anything at all. At least at first. I was in Pallet Town when I was suddenly teleported to the city outskirts without touching anything. It reminded me of the Mew glitch. I figured the kid intentionally tried to glitch the game, causing these issues. I walked around Lavender Town, and to my surprise, the glitch was indeed active, and a wild Mew appeared. The Lavender Town music played instead of the usual battle music. Maybe the cartridge was really faulty after all. I also noticed that no attacks appeared on the screen. The only choice I had was to run away. At the time, it kind of annoyed me. Honestly, who wouldn't want to catch a Mion at the start of the game? Since it was my only option, and I didn't want to restart from the last save, I had to do it. The game then continued as usual, and I was lucky to get the Sylph Scope. When the Pokémon Cemetery mission began, the game acted up again. Rather than walking through the tower's floors, I was teleported straight to the last one. I promised myself I'd try to calm Marowak's soul. I searched and found it. The Marowak in question appeared. There was still no music. After sending Pikachu into battle, Marowak turned into Mew. But this time, I had attacks, so I was able to attack it and lower its hit points. Although my Pikachu was much higher level than Mew, it did little damage. Mew, however, never really attacked. I finally got its hit points low enough to try catching it with a Pokeball. I thought that if I caught it, the game would go back to normal. But when I threw the Pokeball, Mew turned into one of those weird ghosts you see when you don't have the Sylph Scope. Suddenly on the screen the message "Ash is out" appeared. That really disturbed me, because my Pikachu was nowhere near fainting. Besides, I still had a lot of Pokemon left on my team. After that message, I thought I heard something behind me, but I was too caught up in the game to notice. So I kept going. Instead of restarting at the Pokemon Center, I was brought back to the top floor of the Lavender Town Cemetery. I saw my Pikachu stopped following me. I moved to where I expected the battle to resume. But I was being led, without wanting to, toward a tombstone, not far from where I had fought before. Once I got in front of it, I pressed A to see if any text would appear. And then I heard melancholic and very distant screams. Then the text appeared, "Here lies Pikachu. My Pikachu was gone." Right after I heard the crying, the Satueur appeared again. I used Rue Carnage, and the Satueur became Mew again. This time, Rue Carnage attacked on his own. Without me touching anything, Mew only had one hit point left. Right before dying, he used Destiny Bond. This move knocks out the opposing attacker if the user takes a fatal hit. When my Carnage Rue attacked again, Mew dodged. He used Curse, dropping to 0 hit points. And then, the move Destiny Bond worked. It knocked out Carnage Rue at the same time as Mew. I still should have won, since I still had 4 Pokemon left on my team. But instead I was out of the game again. I wanted to quit, but I couldn't. It felt like a joke, and I wanted to find out why. Once more, I was on the top floor of Pokemon Tower, directed to a tombstone again. Where was my Pidgeot this time? And once again, the same thing happened. It kept happening again and again with all the other Pokemon on my team until I had only one left. I thought I'd be knocked out for good, but my character got to fight Mew directly. It had become complete nonsense, but once again, something told me not to stop playing the game. I couldn't attack Mew because all my Pokemon were dead. I also didn't think Mew could attack me, since I was playing as my own character. However, Mew used Curse and Destiny Bond on me. How was it possible for a Pokemon that could normally use its moves on other Pokemon to attack me directly? Obviously, I was immediately out of the game. Then, once again, I heard a noise behind me. I couldn't describe it to you. It sounded like the game echoing. I turned around but saw nothing. I just felt watched again. I got chills, but kept playing. When I respawned in the game, I wasn't at the cemetery this time. I was in my room in Pallet Town. I quickly saw my character wasn't normal. He was transparent. Again, there was no music. I walked a few steps in the game when the menu opened on its own, and my trainer card showed up. I had no badges, Pokédollars, or Pokemon in my Pokédex. I closed the menu, but it popped up again, showing I only had one Pokemon left on my team. Oddly, the sprite was invisible, and no name appeared by its health bar. I saw this mysterious Pokemon had just one move. Teleport moves you to a random spot on the map. Then I tried to leave my room, but couldn't. I tried to use the map and the computer on Ash's desk, but neither worked. Not knowing where I was headed, I used teleport anyway. I appeared again after a short loading time in the Pokemon Tower on the very top floor. I was led to a new tombstone. This time, it was my character's name written on it. It said, "Here lies Ash." That made me angry. Whoever gave that cartridge to the boy, I thought it was totally twisted. I never realized how much a child could be hurt by this sick game. I didn't know where to go or what to do. So, I walked to the place where the battle with MYU usually appeared. A pretty well-started battle, but it wasn't with Mew. This time it was my own character. On my screen, a killer bone replaced Sasha. I froze, realizing what was about to happen. As Sasha sent out his Pokemon, my killer bone became Mew. I looked at my list of moves and expected to see only the move Teleport, but instead I had two other moves, Curse and Harvest. Destiny. So I was about to kill all my Pokemon to end up with Ash himself. Then I turned off the console, and it only took me a few seconds to notice what was reflected in the black screen of my Game Boy. I saw another person's white face right beside mine. I quickly got up, heart pounding, and moved as far away as I could. I searched the room thoroughly, but no one was there. I finally decided it was just a hallucination. Not knowing what to do, I left my house. Later, I convinced myself to turn the console back on to check if my save was still there. But the file was corrupted. The little boy never came back to the store to get his cartridge. Maybe he was just trying to get rid of it. After all we'd been through, I couldn't blame him. I understood. I know that you two will probably be curious, just like me. But I insist, if you also find this game, I strongly advise you to get rid of it. I don't know what would have happened if I had killed my own Pokemon in the last battle. And in any case, I don't want to know. I'm not sure if what I saw in my console's reflection was real. But I could clearly feel his presence throughout the game. I could clearly feel someone watching me play. And what I take away from all this is that there could be tons of reasons why the child was never returned to the store. And honestly, I don't know if I really want to know what happened to him. Undertale has been a popular game for a while. Many people know the game's different endings. You must complete the game with certain actions to unlock them. For example, there's the neutral route, the so-called normal ending. To achieve it, finish the game after killing at least one monster. There's also the pacifist route. To unlock it, you have to finish the game without killing any monsters. It's a neutral road. It's also known as the false pacifist route. It's a nice ending, but it's not the best one of all. The true pacifist route is definitely the best. To unlock it, finish the game without killing monsters. By befriending most main characters, like Alphys for example. There's also another ending. The genocide route. The genocide route can only be completed under one specific condition. Killing all the monsters in the game, it's not enough to just kill the monsters you encounter, right? That will put you on a neutral route. You have to kill absolutely every living being you can fight with. You need to find the missing monsters from your terrible record yourself, and kill them until there isn't a single one left. This grim path draws hatred from all monsters in the game. So, after thinking about it a bit, I started to wonder if there was a true genocide route. After all, there is a true pacifist route. In that case, how do you trigger it? I spent a long time looking into it, and never saw anyone trigger it. I convinced myself it didn't exist, until a few days ago. I had finished Undertale again, on the genocide route. As usual, I erased the other world, and was ready to start a new game. Only my PC started acting extremely weird. I was suddenly sent back to the desktop. So I thought the game had crashed, but no. The game was still open, and the tab was still in my desktop's taskbar. So I clicked on it, and then Undertale opened to a completely black screen. I'm not sure how long I waited, but eventually a small window appeared on the screen. Given the sound that played when the text appeared, I immediately knew it was Sans. How was that possible? I had just killed him, and the game hadn't even been reset yet. I read what was written and instantly saw what was wrong. I hope you're proud of yourself, Frisk. You killed absolutely everyone, and now here you are facing me again. Without appearing weakened in spirit or blood, flowing from the single wound on his chest. You're even worse than I thought. To the point that I don't even have the strength to make a joke anymore. What will you do now? Then, unexpectedly, a fight with him began. I was thrilled to finally find an alternative ending to the genocide. But when I saw my options during the fight, I quickly realized it would be especially difficult morally. I could only attack Sans without having the option to spare him. Except, instead of the traditional button, fight was displayed as finished. What was Frisk going to do? Finish off Sans, who was nearly dead. Meanwhile, Sans kept sending me a few messages. Some said, do what you must. Others called me the worst scum possible. I had to choose the completed option. And when I clicked on it, the screen went black. The sound Sans was making seemed to slow down as the screen started flashing red. In the background you could hear knives cutting into flesh. I never expected Undertale to be this creepy. I had goosebumps. I almost quit the game just as the sound stopped. The screen had gone black again. I waited by my screen, but nothing happened. Was that all? That's how the path to the true genocide ends. I restarted the game, curious to see more images. When I opened the screen, the Undertale title looked normal. I started a new game, but strangely I wasn't asked for my name. After a moment, the game began. At first glance, I was back in the underworld again, but something was wrong. I didn't get a cutscene or any music, but the strangest thing was my character. A ghost floated in the air. Except it had no mouth or eyes, just a white shape like Napstablook, but faceless. I felt really uncomfortable when I saw it. I could control the ghost, but it was very slow. The place where it was just darkness. Everything was completely black. I moved forward for several minutes. Despite the darkness, I was able to make out his movements, which reassured me that he was actually moving forward on the map. But I kept moving forward like that for several seconds, without anything at all happening. I began losing patience when a message suddenly appeared on the screen. It was my character. He said, "What did I do?" I kept moving forward, then tried to walk a bit backward and to the sides. A new message appeared next. So this is my punishment? After another moment, another message appeared. So this is all I deserve. No, this is what you deserve. In an instant, my controls stopped responding. I tried to move forward, backward, or sidestep, but nothing happened. Without warning, the ghost turned around and faced me for the first time since the start of this new game. He continued, "It's you. You are the only one to blame." I was speechless. The ghost spoke directly to me. "Answer me, you behind the screen. Why did you make me do this? Why do you enjoy killing people so much? Answer me." I was so surprised I didn't know what to do. I wanted to close the game with a cross, but as soon as I did that, my mouse pointer vanished from the screen. "Oh, is that what you're looking for?" The ghost raised his hand and revealed the mouse cursor he held. "Don't even try to unplug your PC or turn off your screen, because I promise you it will get 1,000 times worse." I no longer understood what was happening and couldn't believe the game was talking to me. To me, Jake, just a regular Undertale player. You know, I'm the one who has the ability to load or save. No matter how much I tried to move my computer mouse, it still wouldn't show up on the screen. "Why are you pushing so hard, Jake? I have the mouse. See, your crimes have blinded you." When I saw my name on the screen, I almost left the room. He kept waving the mouse pointer over his head. "Now it's my turn to play, Jake. We'll count to 3 and I'll load a new game." What was he up to? I saw a face appear. It looked like the one from the television on Photoshop Flowy 2. His face moved closer to the screen. I was about to scream when he said 3. My computer screen glitched, and all kinds of characters appeared on the screen. I tried to move the mouse, but nothing happened. Among the countless characters, his final message appeared in red. "The only way to start over on a good foundation is to erase everything. Absolutely everything. Erasing reality achieves nothing. But erasing them all the ones you created, will allow the resurrection of this world. I hope you don't repeat the mistake this time. Otherwise, I'll come back and do even worse." After that, the screen went black and my computer made a strange noise. I tried several times to turn the screen back on, but realized it was actually my tower. My computer had just burned out. And since that day, I was never able to turn it back on again. I still haven't played Undertale again. I know this game is very moralizing, but I never would have thought it could be to this extent. Also, how did the game get my personal information, and how could it control my PC like that? I had no idea, but I'd learned my lesson. I'll never underestimate this game again. I really don't want to know what fate I'd face if I started another run. True genocide. When I was 10, on my birthday night, I got one of the best gifts of my life. That might sound a bit exaggerated to you, but that's really how it was. The Pokémon game on Game Boy revealed my true love for video games. When I started playing, I immediately knew I would become addicted to it. And for good reason. In the years that followed, I became a video game adventurer. I wanted to play absolutely everything and never stop. I was caught in this spiral, this virtuous circle, where every game made me want to discover another one. Even today, I'm absolutely certain that I owe this passion to Pokémon Blue version, because it was the very first game that really got to me. But I grew up like everyone. Then comes the urge to revisit old memories and pull out my cartridges for a moment of pure nostalgia. And this time, I wanted to discover everything, those different Easter eggs, those secrets, those glitches, absolutely everything. I wanted to finish the game 100% without missing what I had overlooked when I was still a child. So I visited several very old websites, using internet archives, in order to find all the secrets that were listed back in the days of Pokémon Red and Blue. And that's how I came across a forum that referred to them. The forum was so old I could only access it via web archives, as it no longer exists. It had many articles. Some noted the dealer bug on Chromoiso Coast. To get Pokemon at level 100 and above, others talked about the different ways to get Missing No, the famous glitch Pokemon of this generation. Some also mentioned the different glitches to visit Bugtown or to get Mew fairly quickly in the game. Then, the members gradually started to go off topic and eventually talked about something else, something different. Many people on the forum were curious about a popular character in this series, Professor Shen. I don't remember how the topic came up, but I do remember reading that the uncertainty surrounding the character's whole story raised a lot of questions for some people. Out of curiosity, I kept reading each of the posts that followed. Initially, there were just theories about him, essentially fanfiction. Nothing definite or canon to the Pokémon story. Then people discussed a detail, a battle that should have happened in the game. A battle with Professor Oak, which was supposedly one of the hardest in the entire game. So I wondered if it was possible to do some tricks to trigger this famous battle in the game. And eureka! I had found a whole tutorial following the messages that the members were sending each other. Of all the Easter eggs and glitches in the game, this was probably the one I wanted to try the most. Knowing that this fight hadn't been removed from the game made me feel like I was doing something new, something totally forbidden. So I picked up the game I had started earlier and got to work. The steps were simple. First, I had to create the bug on Cramoisil's right bank. The one that let you trigger Pokémon encounters at level 100 and higher. And this depended on the nickname the player had chosen. I would have named mine Raid if I wanted to trigger a bug. To meet Professor Shane, I absolutely had to have a nickname containing the character MN in the 3rd, 5th or 7th position. And so I had to create a new save file. So I did it, since I wasn't very far in the game, and I entered the nickname Shane M. And I figured that, at worst, after discovering the bug and experimenting with a few things, nothing would stop me from creating another, more personal save later on. After picking the nickname, I experienced something strange that wasn't mentioned in any forum threads. Professor Shane, instead of his usual, "Okay, your name is X," said something different to me. 3 dots of ellipsis. I figured I'd just seen an obscure bug, likely caused by the username choice. A bit doubtful at the time, I quickly moved on to something else. So I continued following the steps. To trigger the bug, I chose my rival's name, whom I named Blue, and I continued my adventure to trigger the bug. That goes without saying. It took me a long time to build a team, then progress in the game until Cinnabar Island was unlocked. It helped me relearn the mechanics and make better choices for my Pokémon. My first playthrough wasn't as successful, so I was proud that my new choices paid off. I was steamrolling every trainer I met. With Charizard on my team and Nidoking, the game was getting a lot easier. In short, I was finally able to continue the glitch steps in peace. So I performed the dealer glitch. I had to dodge several trainers, use the hidden machine fly with my Pokémon several times, and even fight a Ditto. Try Growl on it. Most importantly, I needed 226 special attack on one of the top Pokémon. So I did everything I was supposed to do, in order and normally. The battle with the professor should have started automatically once the pause menu was triggered, so I was walking in the game, crossing my fingers that the pause menu would activate. With a smile on my face, I was ready to find out what team he had. I had purposely avoided finding out so I could be surprised. But instead of the pause menu, which was supposed to pop up out of nowhere, I got a black screen and the music started glitching. At first, I was disappointed. I thought I must have messed something up in the steps. Annoyed, I put my finger over the Game Boy, ready to turn it off when the screen suddenly turned white. A moment later, music began playing. It was music I knew quite well, since it was the theme from the Elite Four. I didn't understand what was happening at all. At the same time, I scrolled through the forum pages, but no one mentioned any bugs similar to the one I was experiencing. So I picked up my console again and carefully watched the new things that started appearing on the screen. Apparently, I was in the professor's laboratory. When I say I was, I mostly mean that I could see it, because my character's sprite wasn't there. Only Professor Oak was visible on the screen. He was standing with his back to me in front of the 3 starter Pokeballs placed on a table. For a while, there was nothing but him, silently looking at those 3 Pokeballs. Then after a moment, a dialogue box appeared. I'll just read the readable part to you, because there were glitched, unidentifiable characters between each word. The message said, "Here you go, Shane, and here are 3 Pokémon." In that moment, I realized I had caused a bug that reloaded the opening sequence. When Shane let us pick Squirtle, Charmander, or Bulbasaur, I agreed. Another message appeared, chosen for Blue, replacing his Raticate. "The world of Pokémon is ruthless." I was almost happy to discover this new dialogue, certain I'd never seen it in any playthrough. Up until then, I had proof that a side story was still present in the game data. So I kept going, hoping to find even more information. And then a new line of dialogue appeared. "You gave everything on this boat." That's how fights should work. The message was again full of unreadable characters. I spent a minute figuring out what came next. But sometimes, on the way back, we wouldn't go through the center. Pokémon Blue will be happy to have this new ally. Since you chose it, maybe this one will live a little longer. I squinted my eyes. I reread the answer several times to ensure I understood it. But that was clearly the case. My character Raid, whose real name is the protagonist of Pokémon Red, Blue, and Yellow, had apparently killed Blue Pyre's Raticate during a battle. Again, Professor Shen seemed to have nothing to say about it. It was as if he was proud of what Raid had accomplished. At that moment, I wanted to turn off the console. I didn't want to ruin my childhood over an abandoned script. I loved the way Pokémon had shaped my dreams. I loved Professor Shen, and I didn't want to see him as a horrible, heartless monster. But my curiosity got the better of my emotions, so I finally pressed A. After a few minutes of hesitation, the screen went black, and shrill sounds came out of the Game Boy's speakers. I turned down the volume, and watched the many flashes that were now appearing on the screen. It was as if the game was trying to find something to display, but couldn't manage to do it. After a moment struggling with this data, a new still image appeared. This time, a new but completely empty dialogue box appeared. I pressed A repeatedly and heard the familiar sound confirming I advanced to the next dialogue. But each time, an empty dialogue box appeared. So I kept going again and again, until finally a first message appeared. Only his writings appeared on the white background. On it were written, still scattered here and there, random characters. Children are the future of education. When I pressed A to see what happened next, the music from the very beginning of the game started playing. It was when Professor Shen first appeared to us. The next message said the Pokédex is already filled. They'll mostly need to learn to fight and use Pokémon. The power plant must be supplied, otherwise our whole world will collapse. The next message was in Japanese, this time with no strange characters. So I took out my phone and used the camera to translate from Japanese to French. Since the message was approximate, I translated it as follows: training Pokémon, challenges, gyms. This must serve one purpose. As I tried to understand, I confirmed again and got another message. Just as I finished it, the mouth opened and the screen suddenly turned off. The worst part of all this is that it wasn't a consequence of the glitch. The batteries in my console were simply dead. I was so frustrated and exasperated by the situation that I didn't want to touch the console again after that. But after a while of cursing myself, I turned it back on and realized I had to start all over again. This time I fully charged my batteries and repeated the glitch exactly as before. Unfortunately, everything happened just as it was supposed to. Pokémon battle with Professor Chain. But nothing else. No dialogue, new images, nothing. Just this battle. If you want to try this glitch, I highly encourage it. I hope you get to fall like I did. On this famous bug. I know you're wondering what Professor Shen's last message was, and if I didn't share it right away. It's just to warn you first. If, like me, you don't want to destroy the image you have of Pokémon, completely forget what I just told you and leave this video, and move on to something else. But if, on the other hand, you're curious and want to know who Professor Oak really is, then I'll share with you the very last conversation I read. What the professor said was, "I don't care about the lives of Pokémon, only humans matter." At 17, my best friend Olivia started a Let's Play YouTube channel. She was a fan of old retro games, but also of lesser-known video games. Most of the time, she played using an old PlayStation emulator on her computer. To be honest, the channel wasn't very successful. She had about 30 subscribers, and most of them were her friends. I used to watch her videos for a few minutes after class, just to help her increase her views. She was really good at what she did. But I guess not every channel is lucky enough to be featured. We were in the same biology group and always sat together. One day, she asked me if I'd heard about a game called Lysergic Acid Diethylamide Dream Simulator. Apparently, it's some kind of dream simulation. That wasn't the case. She decided that since I hadn't heard of it, the game was perfect for the channel. That very evening, she posted a few videos about it. It was a rather unusual game. From what I understood, the objective was just to walk through various Japanese settings and activate mechanisms to move between environments. You could see various people and animals wandering in odd places, but they seemed to ignore the player's character. However, one non-player character stood out from the rest. His name was Greyman, and fittingly, he wore only grey. He tended to appear without warning, and would suddenly move toward the player, as if he were gliding across the floor. If he approached the player, the screen would turn white and Greyman would vanish. Every time that happened, Olivia would jump, then nervously laugh before continuing to play. Gameplay was split into days and lasted just a few minutes. The player was then sent to the main menu to start a new dream. Olivia reached day 12 in only a week, clearly loving the game. She looked completely absorbed in it, almost hypnotized by it. However, one night she posted something in her community tab.
The grey man appears in my dreams. I need to stop playing. What game do you want me to play now? Tell me in the comments.
I wasn't really worried about his post. The next morning in biology, she said she'd stop playing that game and try a different one. I would have recommended one, but since we had a big test coming up, I wanted to focus on the lesson. At the end of it, I still suggested to her that she take a little break from YouTube. She told me it was a good idea, and we decided to meet up that night to study at her place. I walked to her place with my biology books. The lights were on, but nobody answered. After my first polite knock, I waited a minute and knocked again. The door opened right away. Olivia stood behind the door, her hair drenched and looking traumatized. Without saying a word, she led me to her room, where various books and papers were spread out on her desk. She looked surprised to see them, after a few minutes of pretending to read. While I was clearly wondering why she looked so anxious and stressed, I finally asked her what was wrong. She mumbled something incomprehensible, but after insisting, she finally confided in me. She told me that about 10 minutes before I arrived, she had fallen asleep in her bath and had a bad dream. She told me she was drowning in her bathtub and couldn't escape, no matter how hard she tried. She was paralyzed and couldn't lift her head from the water. And above her, watching her, she could see the grey man. I quickly understood why she was so frightened after waking up. On the other hand, I didn't understand why she was still in that state, after all this time. I tried to reassure her, but it seemed she knew I didn't understand why she was still that way. Then, she grabbed my shoulders and said to me,
It lasted for weeks. I was only asleep for about 15 minutes, but in my nightmare, I was drowning underwater for weeks.
After that night, Olivia grew increasingly distant. We no longer talked in class, and she seemed unwell. Her eyes had turned red and seemed sunken in their sockets. She also had big purple circles under her eyes. After a week, her handwriting, which I used to find very pretty and neat, turned into some kind of unreadable scribble. Until she stopped writing altogether. During class, she would just keep her head hidden between her arms. Sometimes she fell asleep like that. She'd wake up minutes later, screaming and pounding the table. After it happened to her twice, she was expelled, but seemed too tired to protest. And for several weeks, she had to attend private lessons at home. When she returned, she sat motionless in class. It was around that time that graffiti started to appear frequently on the city walls. It resembled Japanese. The graffiti's placement and color varied greatly. Back then, I hadn't looked into it and assumed it was just vandals seeking attention. However, one night, as I was coming home after a party, half a bottle of vodka in my hand, I noticed that the moonlight transformed the writings, making them completely fluorescent. I followed the graffiti until I reached a small dark alley. I went inside and found a new, half-finished graffiti. Just above Olivia's slumped body, she was crouched on the ground, crying, a spray paint can in her hand. I sighed and sat beside her. I offered her vodka. She took several gulps and gave the bottle back, and sighed. Her eyes were closed, and I'm not really sure she knew exactly where she was.
I can't get any rest.
What?
I can't get any rest. I fall asleep, and then I find myself in another version of where I was before I fell asleep. It's exactly the same place, but he's there, and he tortures me.
And what does that mean, Olivia? And I say this while pointing at the Japanese symbols that were above her. But as her only response, she just lowered her head.
The pain doesn't stop when I wake up.
Olivia didn't say anything else for the next half hour, and after insisting heavily, I managed to see her go back home. She got up and staggered away, eventually disappearing into the night. Before going home, I took a photo of some graffiti. The next day, I searched for a list of Japanese symbols on Google, and after opening one of the lists, I tried to match the symbols I had photographed with those on the list. It was very hard, because to me, all the Japanese symbols looked the same. After searching for them one by one for a very long time, I entered the symbols into Google. It turns out it was the Japanese name for the Violence District, an area that comes directly from the game lysergic acid diethylamide. This place in the game was made up of dark streets covered in graffiti, as well as bodies lying on the ground, sometimes hanging from lampposts or simply decapitated. Olivia often visited this place in the game while recording her videos. After all that, I went to bed and was woken up in the middle of the night. I found Olivia standing in the dark corner of my room. She was wearing a hoodie and staring at me. She carried her PC under one arm. The next moment, she put it on the bed and then started begging me to delete the game, the videos, and even her YouTube channel. I asked her why she didn't do it herself. She simply replied,
I don't want to touch it.
Then she just went out through the window she had apparently come in through. I was way too shocked to fall back asleep, so I turned on her PC and did what she asked me to do. I deleted all the videos that were in her files, and I also deleted her YouTube account. After that, I noticed a file named psexfin.exe right on her desktop. I double-clicked on it to launch the PlayStation 1 emulator, and I started the game Lysergic Acid Diethylamide Dream Simulator. Then I loaded her save file, which was still on day number 12. Olivia was clearly unstable. A lot of people had played this game and nothing had happened to them. I was sure I could do the same as them, so I decided to continue where Olivia had stopped. I began exploring dreams, just as Olivia had before me. The game was very strange, just like in the videos I had watched. I played for a bit, then shut down the PC. I didn't feel anything unusual after that. The only thing that bothered me was that I had played for 6 days in the game and I hadn't encountered Greyman even once. But I was too tired to think about it any longer, and I ended up falling asleep. I dreamed that night. I was on the brown mountain that I had already seen in the game. The sky was dark, and all around me there was a very thick fog. And not far away there was a figure, with its back turned, barely discernible. It was difficult to try to see more clearly, but the figure seemed to be wearing a green parka and jeans, clothes similar to what Olivia was wearing. I was unable to move, and the figure started to slowly glide across the floor toward me. Yet, she was still facing away, and the next moment, the figure finally turned around, and I was able to see Olivia's smiling face before I woke up. Olivia. Didn't go to school the next day, nor the day after. I started playing Lysergic Acid Diethylamide, Dream Emulator, and kept encountering the Greyman. Which, by the way, let me know that there was nothing wrong with my copy of the game. So, it was really strange and weird that he didn't show up in Olivia's file. I did a lot of research on the internet and asked fans of the game why. The Greyman suddenly stopped appearing at the end of the game, and they all said that it didn't happen, and that was actually the point of the game. Players were supposed to expect to meet the Greyman at least once per dream, the following weekend. The police came to my house to ask me if I knew where Olivia was, or what had been bothering her lately. I replied that we rarely talk now. Trying to put all that behind me, I started thinking about my future and focusing on getting better grades. Several months later, they found Olivia. She was in a forest a few kilometers from our town. Forensic police concluded that she had hit herself with a large stone until it resulted in her death. All of this happened the day after she appeared in my room, and since then, I dream about her very often. To conclude, if I have only one piece of advice to give you, it's to be careful with this game. I don't know what it's hiding, but I sincerely think that Gremlin is much more real than it seems. Mario has been a video game icon for decades. He has appeared in more games than we can count. Every year, a new Mario game is released, including titles like Mario Kart and Smash Bros. Fans will recall a time when no real Mario game was released. Because yes, from 1997 to 2005 there was only one Mario game that was released. Afterward, Super Mario 128 generated excitement among fans. No concrete information was given about the game. Then finally, the creator of the series, Shigeru Miyamoto, stated that it was just a series of concepts they tested and not an actual game. Super Mario 128 is fading from memory as new Mario games come out. During Mario Sunshine's release, Nintendo struggled to sell its consoles. The Nintendo 64 and GameCube weren't as financially successful as the Nintendo Entertainment System Super Nintendo, or later, the Wii. For a company as proud as this, relying only on video game sales for revenue, this situation was very troubling, and the highest-ranking employees were disturbed. This was viewed as a personal failure. Nintendo started developing a Super Mario 64 sequel soon after its 1996 release. By the late 90s, it was clear Nintendo was losing the console war. Super Mario 64 sequel was completely reworked because the Japanese company felt the improvements weren't impressive enough compared to rivals. Seeing the more realistic and violent games that were coming out on Sony's PlayStation, Nintendo considered making Mario a game that matched more with what the public wanted. There was significant internal conflict over the extent of the new resolutions. The only clue that was revealed to the public was a comment from Miyamoto, who said that Mario and Luigi should act more like adults in the games that would be released on the GameCube. The new Mario project became two games. Luigi Mansion, which reflects the darker side that some employees wanted, and Super Mario Sunshine, which went in the completely opposite direction. Both games came out a year after the GameCube. Nintendo felt confident their new console and Mario game would restore their former glory. But everyone who knows about gaming knows that it didn't really turn out that way. The GameCube performed worse than the Nintendo 64, while the video game market grew more violent and realistic. During this period, Nintendo's dark phase intensified, and the project for a darker Mario was brought up again. The game's called Super Mario 128. We don't know what happened then, but as we all know, no game by that name was ever released on any Nintendo platform. The recent source, who revealed the troubles Nintendo was facing during the final days of the 64, refused to talk about what was happening when the GameCube flopped. But that same source recently released a prototype of Super Mario 128, which could be played online on the Wii Homebrew channel. What follows is my personal experience because I tested the game myself on my Wii. The game was clearly a beta. The title screen was just white text saying Super Mario 128 on a black background. There was no options menu, nor any save file selection. After the title screen, the game started right away. You could hear Bowser's laugh, the same one from Super Mario 64, looping in the background, while a dialogue box showed the following message. Mario, I have kidnapped Princess Peach. She won't live long enough to see the sunrise, unless you take her place. You know what to do and where to go. Don't try to stop me, unless you want to speed up her death. It was clear that the game was darker. After closing the dialogue box, the gameplay phase began. The first thing I noticed was Mario's design. His body was as detailed as in Super Mario Galaxy, but with more realistic proportions, while his head resembled Super Mario 64. Clearly his design wasn't finished, and it was the same for the rest of the map. Simple platforms floated in the air, with a perfectly blue sky and a few clouds in the background. The clouds looked more realistic than those in the old Mario games. Graphically, it was still pretty impressive. There was no music or voices, but there were sound effects and grunts when he jumped. The jumps he made seemed more realistic and less exaggerated than in the other Mario games. So he jumped less high and was also less precise than in Mario 64, for example. The different types of jumps that were in all the 3D Mario games weren't present this time. I kept exploring the level. There was nothing remarkable about the gameplay. The enemies hadn't been added yet. I just jumped between platforms, nothing complicated. As I progressed, I noticed the graphics gradually changed. The sky grew increasingly cloudy until it was fully covered. And then they started to get darker until they became completely black. After that, it started to rain. I reached a small platform where a toad sat, resembling those from Super Mario Galaxy. When I jumped onto his platform, a dialogue box appeared. "We don't want you anymore, Mario. You have no business here. Just give Bowser what he wants and die." After the dialogue box disappeared, I couldn't control Mario anymore. Mario stood still for a moment, turned around, and fell off the platform. His body looked completely disjointed as he fell. I could also see that there was a modern realistic city just below the sky. The buildings looked neglected, but there were people on the street. And then, Mario fell to the ground with a particularly realistic crash, but he didn't explode or show any visible signs of injury. He just lay there. The people in the town kept walking past him, ignoring him, even though I thought I saw several of them giving him cold and angry looks. This went on for several minutes, and after a while, people stopped showing up. Mario got up and I regained control. He couldn't jump anymore and he was walking very slowly, limping. The city buildings didn't seem to be interactive, so I kept walking down the street for a long time. And finally, I found a small house that didn't seem to belong among the huge buildings. When I approached the door, Mario opened it automatically. The screen turned white and black text appeared. It said, "The House of Memories." I think that was the name of the level. I pressed a button and Mario reappeared. He was now inside the house. Everything felt oversized for him. It wasn't huge, but it made Mario seem like a tiny child. The house was full of ordinary objects, coated in dust and neglect. There was no one on the first floor, just broken lamps and rotting food. I found a door that led to the basement. In the basement, I found a shabby couch and a television that didn't work. But what really caught my attention was what was on the couch. 2 child-sized skeletons were found, but due to the house's odd proportions, they were larger than Mario. I was starting to get really disturbed by all this. How could such a disturbing game be at such an advanced stage of development? I walked up to the skeletons and pressed some buttons to try to interact with them, but nothing happened. I was about to try something else when I nearly had a heart attack because of a loud boom I heard in the game. What looked like Bowser had suddenly leapt up, smashing the ground, and appeared right in front of Mario. When I say looked like, it's because the thing that appeared looked nothing like the usual Bowser. The reptilian monster that had appeared had Bowser's usual brown, yellow and green colors. But this version looked much more realistic and frightening than any version of him I've seen up until now. The proportions also didn't look like Bowser's. His arms and legs were way too long compared to his body, and ended in sharp, razor-like claws. The monster's shell didn't look like it had spikes stuck onto it, but instead seemed to naturally be part of the shell and was the same color. He had small, deep black eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth that took up a large part of his face. Mario seemed completely terrified by this thing. A dialogue box then appeared. "You made me wait too long, Mario. I will eat flesh very soon. Are you going to surrender, or does Peach have to die?" I still hadn't regained control, and Mario just stood there trembling for several seconds before nodding his head. Bowser then spoke to Mario with his long claws. There was no blood, but it was clear. The animation and sound effects made it clear that Bowser's claws pierced Mario's body. In one motion, Bowser pulled Mario toward his face and tore his head off. Once again, there was no blood on Mario's neck, but the sounds were there. The screen went black and white. Text appeared, Mario's eternal home. Once again the character of Mario appeared in full, and the level began. Mario was the only thing visible on the screen. Except for the black background, he was floating as if he were in space. I could control him a little, but it was like I was only roughly deciding which direction Mario would fall. As he drifted aimlessly, voices began to appear. They were deep voices echoing, telling Mario that he was useless, that the world didn't need him anymore, and that everyone would be happier when he was dead. High-pitched cries could be heard, which I think were meant to be Mario's. It really disturbed me, and I had to hold back my tears. I didn't understand why, but it affected me deeply. The voices and the cries continued for several minutes before I noticed something grey in the distance. I walked in that direction and it took a long time to reach it. When I got close enough, I finally saw what it was. A tombstone. It was simple, with cracks in various places. And as I got a little closer, I saw what was written on it. I turned off the game right after reading the message and won't play any beta versions again. On the tombstone there was only one word written. Innocence.